Hey YouTubers, and welcome back to another, movie discussion at this point. Honestly, I don't do a whole lot of these, but I'm hoping to do a couple of them in the future. Stuff I really want to talk about, stuff I want to kind of bring guests on anyway. But with that being said, I actually have a brand new guest on my channel, never been on my channel before. But before I introduce him, I want everyone to go into the description section below, hit that link for Mikey Savage 21, because this guy covers like a lot of different stuff, but he does some really awesome movie reviews for you guys. So please make sure to go check him out. But Mikey, how are you, man? Say hello to everybody.
Hey, what's going on, Savages? You already know it's your favorite sweatiest savage on the internet, your boy Mikey Savage 21. So happy to be rocking it with Real to Real, man. We're about to get into a real sweaty topic here, if you catch my drift.
Fast and sexy, it's real furious. But anyway, guys, we're going to be talking about today the future of the Fast and Furious franchise, because look, we just saw the Fate of the Furious, Fast and Furious 8, Furious 8, Fast 8, whatever you want to really call it, F8. F8, yeah, there's just so many different names. This first of all, I gotta say, before we get into any of the like story or spinoff or anything that they could really do, I gotta say, like, one thing I really want them to keep up with this franchise, because it's been kind of a mainstay since the first and second film, is really like most creative titles for any other like film franchise out there, man. Can you agree with that? It's like we got Fast and Furious, like Too Fast, Too Furious. What weird name is that? Tokyo Drift, Fast and Furious, like Fast Five. It's just, oh my god, there's just so many different ways that they figured out how to like put together Fast and Furious in one title.
Exactly, and this new one with Fate of the Furious, and it was like, oh, okay, because of the whole old Dom has turned on his team, so this is the Fate of the Furious. What's going to become of the franchise? And I was like, oh, okay, that's cute. Okay, I get it.
I know what's going to become of the franchise. You're going to make 2 more films after this, and probably spin-offs and all this other stuff, because you're not going to give away a billion-dollar franchise just because it's artistically creative or right to, end it when it's still on fire. But I guess with that said, so you and I have both seen Fate of the Furious. For anyone who hasn't seen Fate of the Furious, please make sure to click off now, pause it, or just come back after you saw the film, because there will definitely be spoilers in this discussion. But man, like, first of all, like, I'm gonna throw it out, like, what did you think of the film, and what were your thoughts on maybe any potential sequel or anything else like that? What were your thoughts on the film?
All right, guys, if you have already not clicked off, I'm about to get real sweaty and savage on this topic. All right, so for me personally, I thought Fate of the Furious was a fantastic sequel to Furious 7. As I didn't think it was as good as Furious 7. Again, Furious 7 is its own film, and with the untimely passing of Paul Walker and all the controversy that was surrounding that film, for James Wan to come and basically make that story as impactful and powerful as it was, that's real credit to him. But I think F. Gary Gray did a perfect sequel here. One of the things that I was worried about was that they were going to just keep throwing out references to O'Connor and try to basically build this off of Paul Walker's death. But one of the things I found real surprising is they didn't do that. They mentioned him a couple of times in here just to kind of as a wink and a nod to the fans, saying that, hey, in the film franchise, he's still alive, even though his actual human counterpart character is passed away, unfortunately. But me personally, I thought it was a good film. Again, these are one of the films that's like fun. You turn your brain off, because again, physics and law and everything does not matter here. We're dealing with characters who are able to move missiles and tanks with their feet and not get them blown off. We have people who are able to stomp on buildings and make them collapse down with just like one stomp. We have people who are able to basically fight on par with people who have been trained in jiu-jitsu and all these martial arts, and the only form of training they've had is working in a car garage. So again, you have to disband the belief of what you know about this franchise. But yeah, I thought this was a fun sequel. Again, I loved all the character interactions. That's one of the main things I want to spotlight, and I spotlighted in my non-spoilers review, was the heart of these characters. That's why I like this franchise so much, and why I care about it so much, is because of the characters. I said, even when the story itself that they're in is kind of bad, the fact that this franchise build itself on characters is really awesome, like seriously awesome, because again, you care about these characters, the whole aspect of it being all about family. It all comes back to about family at the end of the day, and how much they love and care about each other really shows out in these films. And I think that's what one of the things that F. Gary Gray was able to spotlight here was the aspect of family, and how this film ultimately, again, it's about Fate of the Furious, but it's about the fate of the family as well. But those are just my quick little thoughts on what I thought about Fate of the Furious. Again, I thought it was a good film. I didn't think it was as great as Furious 7, but I did think it was still a great follow-up and sequel to Furious 7, and I'm looking forward to what they do for 8 and 9, or what they do for 9 and 10.
Yeah, like I completely understand where you're coming from, man. I agree with a lot of the points you made there in terms of like character building and just kind of the family aspect of everything that went into making this franchise as big and popular as it is. I mean, like I said, like it's the biggest opening worldwide record ever. I mean, obviously it strikes a chord with the worldwide audience, not just domestically. In fact, there's really, considering the numbers that have come in, and I know, like, I'm a numbers guy, you've told me you're a numbers guy, like, considering the numbers that have come in, there's signs that are showing that it's like the domestic audience might be slowing down a little bit with this fast-paced franchise. But audiences around the world, I mean, big, dumb, stupid as they are, like, they love them, and it's not hard to see why. There's a lot going on here in its favor, just being kind of big and ridiculous, easy to follow, as crazy as it is, and also widely diverse. I mean, you get to see almost people of like all different colors and creeds and stuff, and they world hop. They go from Abu Dhabi and all these other places. I mean, obviously they do strike a chord, so that's something really going in its favor. And I feel like that's one thing I really like about it is it's like a modern day, I guess, spy heist thriller espionage. I mean, they basically recreate it with every single film, and they did it here too. Personally, like, when you talk about characters and stuff, I mean, I agree with the whole, like, I understand and I agree with the whole Paul Walker controversy. I honestly want to do like a separate video about this. I don't necessarily want to take too much time here, and I agree. Like, I'm glad they didn't necessarily bring him back to one degree, but at the same time, like, his absence was like sorely, or like really felt, and obviously, like, they didn't necessarily find a way around it. And if I was going to dig a little deeper, I would say that essentially what happened was they let Letty get like a bigger role in this film, because obviously I feel like she's now the heart of the franchise. I mean, you take Jason Statham, you take Dwayne Johnson, you take everyone else in this franchise who has even a remote sense of kind of charismatic screen presence, and those people are really good. But considering the story, the emotional impact for that character in particular, Michelle Rodriguez she kind of took it home, in my opinion, just in terms of everyone else. There was just so much put on her. And at the end of it, my only real criticism for that was, like, it's hard for me to kind of see how she would be okay with everything that just transpired. Like, yeah, I knew you weren't necessarily evil, and I knew you must have been doing this for some reason. That's fine. And the whole, like, yeah, you had a kid with another girl, even though we're madly in love, and also we were talking about just having kids like another day. Like, that's fine. Like, because she had her amnesia spell and all this other stuff. So obviously everything that happened before that is like open game, and she was understanding to begin with. But like, you pile that kind of emotional bombshell on top of like everything that he had just done. It seems like, I mean, like, you know, as ridiculous as these movies are, the most wacky thing, in my opinion, is that she'd just be okay with it. And that was something that really kind of struck a chord with me. I just didn't feel like that was realistic, as crazy as it might sound. And I mean, I'm happy that it ended up the way it did, especially with, you know, him naming the son after Brian and everything like that. But then also, like I said, the whole Paul Walker thing just kind of looming over everything is the fact that this guy was he should have been there. Even if it was at the end of the movie, because they're sitting there, the whole movie is like, maybe we should tell Mia and Brian. He's like, no, we let them, like, we made a promise, we're going to let them retire. even if it was at the end of the movie when they're on top of the building in New York, if they were pulling away and then like Mia and Brian showed up and it's like, oh man, we got something to tell you, like, or something, like, it's weird. Like, you could sit there and say like Paul Ryan's character is, or Paul Walker's character, I mean, not Paul Ryan, Paul Walker's character is still alive, yes, but considering how important family is to them and how everything that they just went through, if they're not willing to invite him to go stay with them in New York for a couple days, like, I just have a feeling like it's going to start dragging on the series the more if they keep bringing him up. Like, you either bring him up or you don't. But if you don't bring him up, or if you do bring him up, he has to show up at some point, even if you don't see his face.
And it's kind of like the same thing with some of the other characters that we got to see come back and reprise their roles. Like, we got to see Elena come back. We got to see Leo and Santos come back. And then, of course, we got the big reveal that Luke Evans is fine and his character is back. You know, I find it surprising that he didn't invite Leo and Santos. Be like, hey, you guys used to roll with us in Fast Five. Like, you roll with us heavily. Why don't you guys come kick it with us? Oh, no, you're just going to do this favor for me and just disappear? Okay, that's fine. Hey, you know, Shaw, I mean, you know, I hate you because, you know, you killed Han, but, you know, we're mutual friends, I guess. Hey, you want to come kick it with us on this building? I mean, you technically just saved my son from a plane crashing to the ground because Cypher is just a wackadoo who has nothing better to do with her time except mess with people. It's like, hey, you want to come chill with us too? Hey, you can bring your mom with us. I mean, I'm sure, you know, Helen Mirren wanted to be, you know, more in the film as opposed to just one couple of scenes of, hey, I'm the mother of Deckard and Owen Shaw, but I'm only going to be in here for maybe 3 scenes at the most. Hey, let's invite Mr. Nobody as well. You know, it's just kind of like, that's one of the things that, like, when they talk about family is they are leaving out certain characters, but I get that our main core cast of characters, they're the family. Just like, you know, I'm still like, okay, where's Lucas's black character? They keep saying that, okay, Lucas Black is going to be more heavily involved. And, you know, I know they said that he tweeted, you know, saying that because of scheduling, he wouldn't be able to be in 8, but at least a reference to him would be nice as well. Like, hey, you know, we got that kid, you know, Lucas Black, and we got his boy Twink and all them other folks and DK and everybody. Yeah, they back there in Tokyo, man. Why don't we invite them to come stay up for a while? You know, that's one of the things that I credit for F. Gary Gray for bringing back certain characters because he's still trying to tie the strings into the other Furious films that 7 was unable to do because 7 already itself had a major cast, and then throwing in Leo and Santos in there would have just been too much. But to your credit, you're right about the Paul Walker thing and about with Letty, you know, you get that she loves Dom with all of her heart, and that the whole entire time when everybody else was, you know, starting to doubt and saying that, oh, you know, Dom has turned on us, what are we going to do? She's the only one with her head up saying that Dom has a reason for doing this. Dom still loves us. He gave me the look. There is something wrong with him. He gave me a look. I'm like, okay, I'm sure if somebody was taking me out, they'd give me a look too. My look would be, oh, that's you in there. Oh no, I know you still got my back. Oh wait, you just flipped my car over, and you know my car could have exploded and whatnot. Oh, you just shot. Oh, Owen Shaw. Oh snap, you just shot. Oh snap. What are we gonna do? You know, no, you know, she the whole time, and even like her back and forth with Ramsey about like, you forget how he saved your life, and I'm like, well, it's not like he necessarily wanted to, he just kind of had no choice but to. But it's kind of like, Letty, what are you jumping down her throat for? She's only known the man for a few months, maybe a year, because I don't know, they don't specify how much time has passed since the events of Furious 7. I imagine maybe a year or so since they're on their, well, no, I guess it has to be a couple of months and they're on their honeymoon. Yeah,
it'd have to be like almost immediately, right? Like just a couple of weeks. Like,
but yeah, so she can't get mad at her because she's only known Dom for a few weeks. So it's like, don't jump down my throat, woman, because I just assume he's gone rogue and that he's gone back to his past. I've only known him for a week. I mean, heck, you have Tej and have Roman thinking the same thing, and they've known him longer than I have.
Exactly. I like that. No, I hadn't really thought.
At the end of the day, this is just a glorified soap opera with cars mixed into it. So
it really is.
I only take it so far when it comes to realistic personalities and how people would really perceive and act in certain situations.
Mm-hmm. And I guess that really does bring us to the heart of the conversation right now. Like, in terms of future of the franchise, I mean, obviously we have Vin Diesel kind of saying that there's going to be 2 more films and that's going to be it. But today, like when we're actually recording this, we got kind of confirmation. We'd been hearing back for a really long time that we're actually going to get a Luke Hobbs, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson spinoff with Jason Statham. With rumors that maybe even Charlize Theron is going to be reprising her role as Cypher as the antagonist of the film. And I can understand that that's a logical way to take the franchise in the future. Of course, we have a lot of people speculating because, look, as much as we want to kind of sit around and deny it, that this film franchise probably won't ever end. Because it probably won't ever end. They'll probably keep chugging them up.
Most likely won't.
Yeah, so if it's not spin-offs, if it's not crossovers, then it's reboots or like soft reboots where, Paul Walker's kid and now Vin Diesel's kid and all these other kids, like, Dwayne Hobbs's daughter and all these kids that are in here in this film franchise right now are all grown up and on cars and all this other stuff too. So like there's so much potential with the future of this franchise to keep going on and forward. And just the idea of like,
and I've already thought of a title too. If they do a spinoff with the kids, they can just call it Furious Kids. Boom, there you go. There, Fast Furious Kids. Boom, there's your title, and it can be all about the kids. And I think that'd be a good fitting title. It's like, oh, these are the kids of the characters that we know and love. And so they basically hinted at that anyway with the fact that The Rock basically retired now, which is going to be kind of confusing because how are they going to do a spinoff with him being a cop when he obviously just said,
he's done.
I'm going to take a break and I'm kind of retiring, so I'm going to be home with my daughter. So is he going to be like,
is Shaw
doing?
Shaw's gonna tell him. Shaw's
know.
Gonna be like drag him into something, or he's gonna get dragged into something. I mean, the last couple films we've seen him just get dragged into something. I mean, the first 2 he was in, 5 and 6, he was, we got to meet him and he was on the move and he was being him. And then now, like the last 2 films, he's just been kind of trying to be him, like do nothing. Like someone's come in and kind of forced him into the action. So. Maybe that's someone will force him into the action again and get him out of retirement. To be fair, I feel like he is probably the best situation. I know Chris Morgan has talked about a little bit about maybe, he gets asked whether they're going to go into space. And before we started recording this, you were talking about your thoughts about how maybe that is what they're going to be doing next. I mean, you want to give any more thoughts on that?
I mean, honestly, with one thing you can say about this film franchise is they up the ante every time. I mean, starting with Fast Forward, and you have the whole breaking him out of the back of a bus the way that they did. Mm-hmm. And then, you jump to 7 where you have them using missiles and rockets and parachuting out of a plane. Parachuting out of a plane with cars and parachutes. And then now in this film, you have The Rock sitting there moving an active warhead with his foot. You have a giant submarine coming out of the ice that's armed to the T. I mean, you have limos that have machine guns coming out of the back of them. You have a sea of cars being used to basically take out other cars to blockade someone in. I mean, basically, I feel like after this, they're going to have no choice but to eventually leave Earth because it seems like they want to keep up in the ante with each film that they do. And so space is the most logical thing that they could go to next. So I feel like, we're probably going to end up seeing something as far as, maybe Dom has to go to space for some reason because Cypher has decided to get up with some of the other former bad guys that aren't dead in this film franchise, and they've plotted to destroy the Earth or something. I don't know.
I mean
Vin Diesel's a superhero in these films, basically, so why not?
It's just going to end up being, like, Fast 10 is just going to be like Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, and it's just gonna be Dom going like world hopping to like disarm every single nuclear bomb on Earth, like, and then shooting off into space, and then setting up for Fast 11 and all that other stuff. I feel like in terms of characters and where they're going, so I don't really think of it in terms of bigger up the ante, but I do understand where that concept comes in terms of like, oh well, space is the only logical idea that they can go for. I mean, I really thought they were really scraping at the bottom of the bucket in 7 when they were talking about, or when they were basically outrunning a drone shooting missiles at them. I'm sitting there going, what else can you do? But then, yeah, going up against a submarine was one of the things that you could do, I guess. But I'm not as creative as they are when it comes to that situation. Like I couldn't think of like the next logical thing to do, considering they've already done planes and submarines and drones and all this other stuff. I don't know how they can go into space, but to real world example, something I feel like would be really cool. That would be I don't know how you put cars in this, but a couple years ago when Red Bull did that whole internet video where the guy jumped out from like outer space. He like jumps out from like a platform and he just basically fell to Earth. I mean, it looks so gross and confusing. Like it's just, you're doing nothing but like falling like thousands of miles a second and just spinning out of your mind. If they could do that with cars, but I guess that would be something a little bit more towards like just jumping out of a plane. With cars, what's the difference? You're just higher up in the ground. But I personally, and plus that really sounds to me like something more that they would do in a XXX movie than something like than Fast and Furious. But when it comes to plot and just story, I look at it more of like how have they evolved and what's the next thing they could do, because the first 3 films were really just street racing. That was the formula. And then 4 was more like,
it became more of about the highest end, along with cars in the background, basically.
Yeah, and then that was 4, 5, and 6, and now like with 7, we kind of introduced espionage. Although I guess it wasn't necessarily. So I guess this new quote unquote trilogy with 7 being more like a farewell to Paul Walker than an espionage film like they originally intended. Maybe they're just going to focus on espionage this last 3 films, and they're going to be like contenders and working directly for the government, doing all these crazy things, which that leads into space travel and all this other stuff that they could possibly do. I mean, I would
basically becoming Universal's form of the Suicide Squad in a sense.
I mean, aren't they already that?
Basically, yeah, because I mean, if these people die, nobody on the planet is gonna like be saddened besides the ones that actually have ties to them. Everyone else is gonna be like, who is Dominic Toretto? Who is Deckard Shaw? Who is Roman Pierce? Who is Ted Parker? Who is Ramsey again? Mm-hmm. Or who is Letty? I mean, basically they could become again the Suicide Squad, because if they go on this earth-shattering mission and they all die, nobody's gonna know except for like their family and their friends. Everybody else is gonna be like, oh, okay.
Well, no, they're like on the top of the most wanted list though. Someone's gonna know.
Oh, poor Roman. He didn't make it to quite number 10. He's still sitting at 11. And look, when we thought that Deckard Shaw was dead, it's like, oh, Roman's like, yep, I'm number 10. Oh, he's still alive. Dang it, I'm still number 11. And I'm just like, why is he 11? And he's the one that blew up that building. I was like, well.
I like the... I did like that. So with them doing like espionage films, I feel like that's really their trajectory for the next 2 films. Like I said, I feel like they really kind of... I don't think they need to bring in like Paul Walker's brothers to basically have him motion capture an entire film, but at least seeing him at like the family picnic at the end of each film, it's necessary.
Or a Skype conversation.
It's necessary, because like it's weird that they don't even like none of it feels at the end that he's coming back. everything's calmed down. They're all just gonna sit around and have a lovely dinner together like family, like they always do. They ain't coming back. Like that, and that's weird. It feels like they didn't let them retire. It feels like they divorced them, and now they don't want to think about them. It's like, and I don't want to feel that way. I love the way they ended 7, and the longer they go on with it, especially if, like you said, like you don't want to see them kind of profiting on Paul Walker's death. If they're gonna do this, we're gonna figure out a way. Like you can't mention them anymore. Like you got to let them go. You can't just keep mentioning them. And I don't know how you do that. Where obviously, like with the weight of the last couple films behind them, and the weight between like the relationships between Mia is obviously Dom's sister, and Paul Walker's Brian character is obviously integrated into that family, or at least should be. It's hard to think, like Chris Morgan said recently, you can't have them not mention him. Like it would be weirder if they didn't mention him than if they did like just a little bit. Like we should tell them, no, we promised we weren't going to tell them. That made sense. It made me happy. But at the end of all of it, they're never going to show up again. Like, is that really the best thing for the film? Like, they won't show up at the granted everyone's going to have like a picnic dinner at the end of each film. Like,
I guess that is a recurring theme. They always seem to have dinner at the end of the films.
Yeah. They do their little prayer, and family's awesome and important and stuff and everything. It's like, but that's what they need to do. Like they need to have them show up, even if it's like in the distance and we're pulling away already and they're just, oh, Brian's here, blah blah blah. Like, that's my opinion. I really think that the whole Shaw and Hobbs spinoff is one of the things that you can do. I mean, those guys had such good chemistry. You can basically take that and do something completely different, kind of grow the franchise out more than you necessarily would either way. And like I said before, and this is kind of one of the things I wanted to talk about, was, and I want to get your opinions on it, is I really think that Universal has not a whole lot, but they have some pretty big franchises that they could start doing crossovers with. I've obviously made that one video about whether I think Luke Hobbs' character, The Rock's character, should be Universal's Van Helsing. But I've also heard a lot of people talk about whether or not they should actually, instead of going into the space for the next films, they should figure out a way to do a crossover with the Jurassic World franchise that they're also building at the same time, and just cross like two of the biggest franchises ever and do something like that. So what are your thoughts on that, man? Do you feel like this type of franchise could survive like a giant crossover like this, even if it doesn't make any sense?
Hey, if you want to throw in their franchise, you can throw in the 50 Shades, the 50 Shades Awful, in there as well. I mean, hey, why not? But no, I could see them definitely crossing over. I'm not sure about Jurassic World, because that would be a bit of a stretch. I could see more so the Monster Universe anything, because they came out this week and there was a report saying that their Monster Cinematic Universe is loosely tied together, but it's not like completely tied together. So if they want to take liberties with that, I think they could do that in a way where it wouldn't really hurt them as much if they did that. But yeah, I could see them combining it with one of their other bigger franchises, because ultimately, at the end of the day, it's about marketing and it's about franchises and getting our dollar, basically. And if they can combine that with another big franchise, then they'll obviously do it. I think one of the people that I would actually love to see them team up with, but I think these are two different companies, is I would love for G.I. Joe. I think Paramount has the rights to G.I. Joe, but I'd love to see G.I. Joe team up with like Dom and them, because here you have the traditional soldiers, the traditional good guys teaming up with essentially again Universal's version of the Suicide Squad, and them teaming up together to take on a threat. I think would be kind of interesting as well. But if they couldn't do that, obviously because there are two different studios, unless they had some kind of deal like Marvel has with Sony for this Spider-Man film. But if you wanted to particularly use one of the movie franchises that they currently have, I could definitely see them using the Monster Universe as one. If not, having some of them show up, maybe they're like in the background, and I don't know, you could have like Dom in the car and he sees like a mummy or something, and he's like, lady, we need to get out of here or something. I don't know. Be like, hey man, let's call up Bryant, something, as far as, with Jurassic World, I could see them. It would be, unique to see their chemistry with Chris Pratt and see how it would all work together. I feel like The Rock would basically just emasculate him and basically be like, boy, hush. Look at me and look at you. I can take this dinosaur like nobody's business. And then Vin Diesel just comes in like the superhero that he's already been established and just finds a way to defeat the dinosaur with just nothing but his car, basically. But no, I honestly think the most realistic one would be the Monster Cinematic Universe, or if they could work out a deal with Paramount, let them team up with the G.I. Joes.
Mm-hmm. I mean, hell, like the G.I. Joe, I hadn't thought about that. That's a really good idea. One of the other ones I heard of, someone wrote a blog about this, pitching the fact that like they should have someone like Mr. Nobody or somebody go like, you need to steal this car like in the next film. Like you need to steal this like one like Chevy or whatever it is car, and it ends up being John Wick's car. And like it's
I didn't even think about John Wick.
I know. It was like that to me sounds pretty cool. Like John Wick versus the Fast and Furious family. Like that would be crazy. But at the same time, like it's just not the same studios. The only
You know what? That could actually work because of the rules and the lore of the Continental and everything. Because what we've established, from John Wick Chapter 2, spoiler alert if you have not seen it yet, is he's basically a marked man now, and everybody's going to be gunning after him. If Deckard Shaw goes back to being an assassin, basically, I'm sure he probably got that email too, so we could see like him be like, oh, so this is who I have to go after.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, why not? And then if he feels like he can't take him out on his own, he might call up Luke Hobbs, or he might call up Dom and be like, hey, I need you to help me take out this John Wick guy. And then here you have John Wick, who's basically on his home taking on the Fast and Furious character. So yeah, I could actually see that working because of the rules and the lore of the Continental, and because of how universal it is with the Continental, because they basically established in John Wick Chapter 2 that the Continental is basically they have one in every single country and every single city, basically. Mm-hmm. So I actually think that actually has some validity to it, and it could actually work.
No, I thought that was a really cool idea myself. It's something I wanted to. I kind of wanted them to be able to explore, but they're two different studios. It's just not something that's really going to work. And I was really trying to commit myself to like, okay, Universal owns these franchises, and they don't own a whole lot of franchises. Universal doesn't own a lot of stuff, but I mean, just considering what they do have, some just kind of straight out ideas that they could do, what might be really fun to see. Okay, personally, if they wanted to let Fast and the Furious kind of, I guess, spin off into different things. Like the one thing I'd really like to see, and this is really crazy because you'd have to take it in a completely different direction, but I really would like to see this is crazy, but Roman, Taj, and who's the girl again? Ramsey. Take Roman, Taj, and Ramsey in New York. So they left them in New York, and spin them off, because you got that love triangle situation, plus like all those people are like really funny characters and everything like that, and figure out a way, because they're like techie and all this other stuff, and this is really stupid, but figure out a way to tie it in with a crossover with Ted. It's so stupid because like I don't even really know because like like they had that car trip and everything in the last film and everything like that. If you're going to do a crossover and everything that they actually could do, I feel like the comedy potential is really there. Just kind of take it in a completely different direction instead of being like high octane. Just have it be like straight up comedy. And then like I said, and I do absolutely believe this. I do think that you wait until you get the 10th film in the Fast and Furious franchise, and then somehow, some way, you try to tie it into this budding, bigger cinematic universe, which is the monster universe, the Universal monsters, because that's always going to be. I mean, like honestly, I don't know many people besides probably myself who are interested in that universe. I personally find it kind of fascinating, personally, because cinematic universes are basically the next big thing. But considering that these characters have so much potential lore and just so much interesting things they could explore, but they're not necessarily the same thing as comic book franchises where you can kind of guess what's going to happen based off of 60 years of source material. Like there's so much there's only so much that's going to be new and so much that they're going to take in kind of bits and pieces from everything that's come before it. So you have these mega fans who are online all the time who are spoiling everything for you. And I know like people like you and I, like we could avoid them, but like I tend to read that stuff because I kind of want to know. And
yeah, same here. Especially when it comes to The Walking Dead, I am very adamant about sometimes spoiling stuff for myself, and then when I don't want spoilers, I end up finding spoilers. Like with the season 8 or season 7 finale, I was like, okay, I have an idea of what's gonna happen, but I don't want to know just right away. And then someone spoiled it for me, and I was like, oh well, I had already kind of figured that out, but I didn't want to necessarily know.
Exactly, and I think that's really the kicker. So that's one of the reasons I'm actually excited for that franchise if they're good. But I'm really excited for that franchise because, I mean, every movie, it's going to be kind of different. I want to see where they take it, and I want to see how they interact with it. But just to be fair, it's a long shot, and it's not going to do. They're not going to be huge movies. I don't expect them to be even that good. So I feel like taking the Fast and Furious franchise, even though it's already crazy, is probably just as crazy as these films are going to be. Trying to work those 10 films somewhere into that continuity to create some sort of a groundwork for it and just kind of jump off from there. And yeah, like you said, like have characters in the background or have some kind of connective tissue between them would be an easier selling point in a way for that franchise to basically jump off the success of the Fast and Furious films and find its own little nook and cranny in this whole bigger cinematic universe marketplace that we've been building up for the last almost a decade now. So.
And there's actually 2 more franchises that you could honestly like use connective tissue to that we have failed to mention. One of them is one that you had mentioned previously in a couple of your videos, the Purge franchise. I'm looking here, Universal actually has the rights to the Purge franchise. So I mean, you could easily throw in Luke Hobbs or somebody into the Purge franchise. That's something very easily done. And then the other franchise that would be very interesting, which is kind of similar to the John Wick franchise, is the Bourne franchise. Ooh. You could actually have, yeah, exactly. You could honestly have like Matt Damon come in and play Jason Bourne, and maybe he's like the next person that they have to go against. And if he's not playing his character of Bourne, maybe he's playing a character like Bourne in one of the franchise films. That way it gives them someone who's smart and calculating just like they are, but is also able to fight them hand-to-hand combat, because that's one of the things that I've noticed with the Fast and Furious franchise is that where it's lacking is all of the villains, they're not very physical. They're more about having people do things for them and they're not as very calculating, except for, Cypher in her own right. I mean, she had everything covered to the T for the most part. But everybody else is basically like they let their lackeys do all the work and they can't compete with them physically, as opposed to if you had someone like Matt Damon come in and be Jason Bourne or whoever, a Bourne-like character, he could come in and basically wreck house. And then again, if you wanted to bring in the Purge into this, I mean, you could have a what-if scenario of like the Fast and Furious crew on Purge night. How would they fare in the Purge night? When family is on the line, how would they be able to combat these other people, basically? So I think those two franchises could honestly work even more so than, again, the Jurassic Park or even sometimes even the Universal Monsters for the most part. And I'll still throw in 50 Shades in there just for some of you 50 Shades sweaties out there who actually enjoy that garbage.
Present. I like those films. But no, like the.
Oh my goodness.
But the thing is, like, guilty pleasure, man. But the thing
There was nothing guilty or pleasurable about that last film I just saw. Nothing whatsoever.
I actually think like the Purge movies are kind of cool, but that's gonna take a lot because like that already has like a huge like worldwide shaping. That's completely kind of real contradicting to everything that we know about the Fast and Furious franchise. But I agree with you. Like, those are universal franchises that could really kind of, I guess, make their way into certain bits and nooks and crannies of the Fast and Furious franchise would be cool. I hadn't even thought about Bourne. Bourne's really cool. And actually, instead of Bourne, because it's really going to be hard to get Matt Damon into these films. It's going to be the biggest franchise in the world. He's been really stingy about playing Jason Bourne for the longest time. And personally, the whole Jason Bourne movie, I mean, you could think of what you want, but I honestly didn't really care for it. I thought it was pretty boring. Kind of a retread. The last one
I saw, you talking about the last one, yeah. Right? I saw the last one, and I had never seen any of the other ones, even the one where they tried to kind of like bring in
Jeremy Renner.
Forget Jeremy Renner. I didn't see any of those, but I went with a guy who has seen all of them, and I asked him his initial thoughts, and he thought it was okay. He said it wasn't the strongest one of the Bourne series. This would be like the weakest one, but it was still good. But then again, his opinion is kind of sketchy because I asked him a few days later, and then he thought it was the greatest thing ever. And I'm like, but your initial reaction was it's not as good as the original. Now you're saying it's definitely up to par. But from what I've seen and from what I've gathered from the other Bourne films, it was definitely the weaker ones. And I could definitely see Matt Damon not wanting to become a part of the Fast and Furious franchise, because then if he did become a part of it and fans loved it so much, now he has two franchises that he has to worry about and has to carry somewhat on his shoulders. More so Bourne, being up in the air, because they left the film open for another one, but whether or not we're going to get another one depends on whether or not Paul Greengrass and Matt Damon can come to some kind of consensus. But you're right, in terms of him, he might not want to be inside of another franchise. And then again, you have to try to, if you were going to do that, you're going to have to start sowing the seeds now, basically. So if they're doing Furious 9, they would basically have to start throwing out hints of, or there's this cat named Bourne. I don't know. Apparently he's come up on our radars as one of the most dangerous men on the planet, and we need to kind of, monitor him and take him out.
And he was basically on the run at the end of the last film, so it would basically make sense. Personally, what I would do, instead of having Jason Bourne in there, like Matt Damon, just bring back Jeremy Renner, because I know you said you didn't really see them. Like the Bourne Legacy, I really liked it. A lot of people didn't. I liked it because it basically had the balls to take the franchise in a completely different direction. In fact, a direction that was way more akin to, or a lot more akin to, the Fast and Furious franchise than any of the other Bourne films, where he was basically a superhero based on like this medication that they were making him take, and he was trying to be able to get more of that medication in the whole movie, because he was basically coming down off the high of it, and it was making him less active and basically killing him. But with that logic and the fact that they're not necessarily talking about bringing Jeremy Renner back into the franchise, then it would make a whole lot of sense to me to basically just merge that part and just merge the series together where, yeah, maybe Jason Bourne does live in this universe, but Jeremy Renner's character survives through the Fast and Furious franchise. And you're looking at someone who was also, like, at the same time been built to be incredibly physical, really physical. And I guess with a little bit of retconning, you can make him just as physical as somebody like Luke Hobbs or Shaw's character, like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson or Jason Statham for the most part. You can do that and make him just as intimidating, although Jeremy Renner just isn't that type of body built or something. You don't really take him as that type of a badass as opposed to those two actors. So no, I completely agree. I hadn't even thought about that, but it's perfect. I would love to see the Fast and Furious franchise basically tie into the Bourne franchise and keep it going that way, because they're both kind of espionage now, and it would kind of work in tying that stuff together. So I really think that's the be-all, end-all. Although I still would like to see them do the cinematic monsters universe, and I would still be open to if they wanted to do Jurassic World, in my opinion, anything that they could really do. And I feel like it's a good idea for them too, because they want franchises that will, I guess, blow up. They want things that could be kind of cinematic universes in their own right, and this would be really smart stuff to do.
And I can think of another way to tie in the Bourne if you wanted to use the Jeremy Renner storyline. And this would fix the whole Paul Walker situation as well. They're not using him that much anyway. You could have like Jeremy Renner come in and basically wreck shop and take out all of them, except for, of course, the kid, because someone's got to carry on the legacy of O'Connor. So you could have him come in and take out Mia and Brian, and this gives incentive for Toretto and his team to step up, just like they stepped up against Shaw basically in Furious 7 when they found that he's the one that killed Han. It gives them a reason to even go after Jeremy Renner's character, and it would also fix the whole Paul Walker situation, because now his character would actually be dead in the movie franchise, and you wouldn't have to worry about trying to bring his brothers back in for motion capture or anything. The only sad part is, again, Mia would have to go with him, because again that would give them more of an incentive, because both Mia and O'Connor are dead now. But of course, again, you leave the kid alive, and then this also gives Dom another opportunity to have another kid possibly, because then of course he's going to sit there and raise their child. So now him and Letty would have two kids to raise. Granted, neither one of them came from Letty. It would still give them an opportunity to raise both of them at the same exact time.
No, I understand that thought. One of the things I really wanted, just kind of in retrospect, the one thing I really wanted from Furious 7, and I argued this back in the day before I had this YouTube channel and everything, was, look, I know it's sad, I know Paul Walker passed before his time and all this other stuff, but let's be honest, I like what they had, I like what they did with him, driving off into the sunset, really emotional capturing scene, but let's be honest, I keep trying to say Saw 7, but Fast and Furious 7 was set up to basically write Paul Walker's character out by killing his character. I really think that would have been something. It would have. I know it would have been kind of been seen as I guess, emotionally heartless thing, and even now, like, killing off his character at this point would still be heartless, but especially in that movie when it was like his last one, his swan song, really. But I personally think that, Owen, like, Shaw's character would sorry, I'll cut this out. God. Anyway, I personally think that, like, Shaw's character setting up after actually killing Han, or being the person who killed Han and coming after them in particular, and the whole film basically hanging on this, like, no more funerals, we're gonna get this guy, blah blah blah. They should have, like, if they were gonna kill him off, they should have done it then. At least then it would have been a little bit more emotionally, like, a little bit more story centric, for that matter. Like, we already had someone whose goal was it to kill everyone. Like, and you put them in.
Right. It would basically be like they're retreading that whole subplot again with the whole Owen Shaw took out Han, and then you have Renner's character come in and take out Mia and Brian, and then it's like just a retread again.
Plus, like, if you weren't gonna kill him, like, don't kill him at this point. That's my only gripe is like I just feel like they shouldn't be killing anyone at this point. But at the same time, I agree with you. Like, it would solve that problem, and as I've already said in this video, it's a problem. But anyway, with that, like, I think I'm done, man. Do you have any like closing words?
No, man. I really thought I dig the topic. I think, again, for the Fast and Furious franchise to keep going, into its 20s. I mean, we'll probably, have a Furious 20 again. That was a great idea about spinning it off with the kids and everything, and you could call it Fast Furious Kids. We got the confirmed mention of a Luke Hobbs spinoff, so they could spin off these characters. I mean, I could see a love triangle story going on with Roman, Tej, and Ramsey basically having their own little story. But no, man, thank you for so much for having me onto the video, man. It's really refreshing to be on the channel. I love films, and anytime I get a chance to really dive deep into some film knowledge and just kind of break down a film and see what worked, what didn't work with the film, and what it could spin off into being, and if it is worthy of continuing to be a franchise. Anytime I get an opportunity to do like that, I'm definitely gonna hop on it. Plus, this topic make me super sweaty, super sweaty. That's why, like I said, man, I'm sitting here sweating bullets right now. I need to probably turn on my AC and everything. They don't call me the sweatiest savage on the internet for nothing, y'all. Just letting y'all know that.
I love it. Anyway, guys, like I said at the beginning of this video, if you've made it this far, please make sure to go down to the comment or the description section below. Probably in the comment section below too. He'll make his way in there too. But make sure to click on Mikey Savage 21 because you won't be dissatisfied with the stuff that he makes. Some really good content over there. Please make sure to go share some love. Anyway, guys, we're going to catch you on the next video. I guess box office film, Dragon Ball, or whatever we decide to do. But guys, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And we're going to catch you on there next time. Bye.
Peace out, y'all.